We've decided that here at the Locked On Nebraska podcast that we are no longer allowed to be surprised when people enter the transfer portal. We'll discuss that next.
You are Locked On Nebraska, your daily Nebraska Cornhuskers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On Nebraska your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win the first $5 bet. Head to FanDuel.com today to get started.
Welcome in. Hello on this Tuesday in December. I am Mitch Sherman from The Athletic. Connor Happer, 1620 The Zone, is with me. Well, Connor, Dante Dowdell is out. Nebraska's leading rusher in 2024, 614 yards. Dante Dowdell ran for 12 touchdowns. That's more than the rest of the Nebraska football team combined in this season. He entered the portal on Monday in, I would say, something of a surprise, maybe even something of a shocker. It seemed that Dowdell was positioned to be part of a Thunder and Lightning combo for Dana Holgorsen in 2025 that now will have to go in a different direction.
Yeah, it's like I said in the cold open there. I don't know if I'm surprised by like any one guy going into the portal, but then you start to think about the guy's situation, and you're like, well, he was the starting running back at a Power 5 Big Ten school that's not like, looking around, they're not like digging in corners and couches for NIL money or anything like that. Like, it's a pretty good situation. It's a pretty good setup for Dante Dowdell or the starting running back at Nebraska, or a guy who shares carries with somebody. And maybe that's the holdup here. As Emmett Johnson went to the portal and then he returned, and I don't know, or maybe it's just one of those things where, the open market value was too much to turn down for Dante Dowdell, or maybe it's both of those things combined. So, like we always say, you don't know if he's gone yet for sure, but in the portal. And the other thing is, Mitch, like the bowl game is still the bowl game is still coming as we're
to play a game next week.
Yeah, and so Nebraska just they gotta really piece it together for that one.
Well, we'll get to that. I want to talk about the short term, which would be the bowl game, and the long term ramifications of Nebraska losing Dante Dowdell, who has 2 years of eligibility left. By the way, thank you again, Oregon, the gift that keeps on giving, burning his red shirt last year. I read a comment on social media on Monday from an angry fan. I think this was about Missouri, which is hemorrhaging players like most programs, and it said, "Why redshirt anyone anymore? Schools should just play players in 5 games." Minimum to make them lose their red shirt in case they transfer. Then you don't give the other program, the potential rival, an extra season of eligibility with the players that you school A took the time to develop and recruit and get into college. I don't know. I don't think that you'll see a lot of schools doing that, because you're also costing yourself a year of eligibility if, against all odds, the player decides to stay in college at the same place for 3 or 4 years. I want to read.
I would say, Mitch, if I can comment on that real quick, I generally agree with that. Now, I don't know. I'm into the idea of the school like forcing it just to make sure they lose.
Yeah, this was like put him out there on special teams in a 5th game.
Yeah, no, I'm not there yet, but I would say, like, what is the use if you are Nebraska, if you are any other school, of taking a guy that you think can play and that you think can help you, but saving. I mean, Nebraska did that with a couple guys this year. Riley Van Poppel was one of them, right? Sitting him down for a year, even though he could have been helping them, just so they can get another year of eligibility on the back end when you don't know if he's going to serve that year at your school. Like the stats are now saying that it's unlikely that person will serve that last year at your school. It's more likely that a player will transfer at least once in their college career. So,
or if he's a very good player, he's just going to go to the NFL anyway.
Yeah, true. Yeah. So
I'm
generally with that.
You cost yourself the once in a lifetime kind of opportunity to have Ndamukong Suh as a fifth-year senior. The only reason that Ndamukong Suh was a fifth-year senior at Nebraska in 2009 is because in 2005, when he was on the way to playing, and they didn't have the 4-game redshirt rule in 2005, but they did have a percentage of the season that if you played above that percentage, then you could not redshirt. And Suh got hurt early in the season in his true freshman year when he was set to play and burn a redshirt, and he was under that limit. So then 6, 7, 8, 9 became the 4 years that Nebraska got to enjoy his greatness. And 2009 was far and away the best year. Yeah, he was good in 2008, but he was the best player in college football in 2009. So if you're going by that strategy and you want to burn a player's red shirt and he chooses to reward you with his loyalty and stay for the entirety of his career, you don't get an Ndamukong Suh in 2009. But like, that is so much the exception.
Yeah, it's also like many generations ago now of college football. Like a hypothetical, would Ndamukong Suh have transferred? Before, like if the current rules applied to him
multiple times. I mean, and that's not any kind of commentary on him. I think there would have been multiple moments in his career, coaching change, whatever, team struggling, injury, want to get back home, whatever.
NIL offers.
Yeah. So a couple comments that Matt Rule made last week on Thursday in his media availability that I want to highlight as we discuss this Dante Dowdell situation. He says, I think we'll wait. I think we'll want to wait 30 years and see who's happier. The guys who went somewhere for 4 years or the guy who moved around. And he's saying like year to year. So, and he's not talking about Dowdell because at this point, Dowdell was not in the portal. But there are players clearly who are intent to test the market every year. And Dante Dowdell, for good reason, you look at Oregon's roster, saw opportunity for himself outside of Eugene, Oregon after one season with the Ducks in 2023. So he's moving around. And now he's seemingly moving on again from Nebraska. So who's going to be happier in 30 years? And I know this is probably not on Dante Dowdell's mind this morning, but is it the Luke Reimer who stays for 4 or 5 years and sees the fruits of his labors and builds a connection with his school? And maybe he's not the best example. Is it the Ramir Johnson, someone who plays the same position as Dante Dowdell? And he will forever be a Nebraska Cornhusker. He will be connected to this era of Nebraska football. It will be a part of his life. He can come back in 10 years and wave to the crowd, and they will remember him. Or will it be Dante Dowdell, who's on his way to playing at 3 schools in 3 years?
Yeah, it's I mean, that's a really good way to put it. And you're also right in that players definitely, you're not thinking about that, obviously. But I do think in the now, there needs to be an evaluation by players or camps or agents or whatever of like you can take it if you're a fan watching from the outside. When you see a guy hop into the transfer portal, you see the news story that guy A is hopped into the transfer portal. You immediately try to rationalize it, right? You immediately try to make sense of it. And it makes sense, like, I don't know, probably 70% of the time. You look at the guy and you're like, wow, okay, he wants to go somewhere where he's going to play. Like, his situation isn't very good. And, he's blocked for playing time, like in 2 years, or he was guaranteed this and it did. Like, you can rationalize it. And then there's some where it doesn't make a lot of sense on paper. And then you look at it and you're like, well, what I'm saying is at a certain point, there needs to be an evaluation by the player of like, is the situation more important or is what I can get on the open market more important right now? And I understand that people want to take, they want to take advantage of what they can get at this moment. But I also think like, I don't know. I'm trying to put myself in players' shoes, and I'm trying to think, well, I like a huge raise, but I also want to go to a place where I feel like I can have success, and I feel like I have a clear path to playing time, and I could bet on myself a little bit. Walking into a different situation sort of blindly that will give you a gigantic raise. It's like there needs to be an evaluation of that from players. I think
Ultimately, if you're Dante Dowdell or a player of his caliber, your goal is to make it to the NFL, because no matter what is going on with your NIL and your revenue sharing in college, the real payday, the real golden pot of gold at the end of the rainbow is to get to the NFL and to sign a contract and to sign another contract. So are you bettering yourself by taking, another, I don't know what the money is, the money difference that he might make between
that's the other thing we don't know.
Nebraska, and let's say it's $50,000. Let's say it's $100,000, which is huge money for these players who were in college. And it's unfathomable to even think about if you're talking in the six figures just a year ago, 2 years ago. But are you putting yourself in the best position? And maybe he is. Are you putting yourself in the best position to be able to get to that ultimate pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, which is to make it to the NFL? That's what he has. That's what these players all have to grapple with. Like do you go for the short term, like, hey, there's a fancy car over there that I can get if I go to this school, but what are you doing for your chances down the road to make it to the NFL? And maybe the answer for Dante Dowdell and Jamari Butler or Prince Umanmielen is to go somewhere else. Like that can do you better in the NFL quest, possibly.
Yeah, it's I mean, there's a lot, and the other thing that we should mention here is that like there's a lot that we're speaking in pretty broad generalities at this point. We don't know if any of this stuff applies to Dante Dowdell, like whatever, but also, we don't know a lot of the things and the numbers and what they're actually sort of weighing out on scales when they go into the transfer portal. So that's a thing to keep in mind, I suppose, as well.
Yeah. All right. Let's come back and talk more about this running back situation, what it means for Nebraska next week, what it means for Nebraska in 2025. And also, speaking of 2025, a new site for Nebraska's opening game in the 2025 calendar. That's next. Okay, college football fans, it is that time of year. It really is. We're just 3 days away from the college football playoff. It's back, and with a newly expanded 12-team format, it's guaranteed to be bigger and better than ever, bringing you all the hard-hitting and high-flying excitement that you love. TNT Sports coverage of the college football playoff begins on December 21st. That is Friday, starting with the CFP kickoff show presented by AT&T at 11 Eastern, 10 a.m. Central, leading into our first matchup. Actually, that's Saturday, December 21st. The games start the night before. But on TNT, it's SMU against Penn State at noon Eastern, 11 Central. Then Clemson looks to upset the Texas Longhorns in a showdown at 4-3 Central. Don't miss a moment of the action. Watch the college football playoff presented by Allstate live on TNT, True TV, TBX, and Max.
All right, Mitch, just to finish up the portal conversation, or to wrap up the Dante Dowdell conversation. So this leaves Nebraska with Emmett Johnson at the running back spot. It has Quentin Ives. It will no longer have Rahmir Johnson or Dante Dowdell. At least we assume.
Oh, right, Rahmir's gone after this year, yes. But he's there next week. He can play at home.
Right. Okay. Yes. For the Pinstripe Bowl, there's. What do we call this, by the way? Is this like 2024B or is this 2025 like AA? I don't know what to do with this.
I think Rule wants it to be 2025 AA. That's more the focus. That of course you want to send out the seniors, but this is game 1 or game 0 for next season.
Yeah. So what do they do at I mean, it's an Emmett Johnson bowl game, obviously. But it does open up a larger question about what Nebraska, how they look at the running back position in general going forward.
Yeah. With Quentin Ives, he's been in the program for 2 years and has made minimal impact, some special teams. He's gotten into some games a bit. You have Mekhi Nelson, who was brought in the summer and is someone that the Nebraska coaches have spoken highly of. But we'll see what the rest of the offseason holds for him. Still around, would seemingly be a part of Nebraska's plans for the 105. And then you have a couple of signees in Jamarian Parker out of the St. Louis area and Connor Booth from Wahoo, Nebraska. Parker is coming off of a serious injury that cost him his senior season. So where's his health situation? And he's a back more in the mold of an Emmett Johnson, or a dynamic playmaking kind of back, like you want to put Corey Barney in the body of a running back like that. That's what Nebraska envisions for Jamarian Parker. So yeah, you probably need somebody, if it's not Quentin Ives, maybe it is Quentin Ives, to be a big back, to be a short yardage guy, to be that player on the goal line that Nebraska had in Dowdell this year, who could knock bodies around and run behind that big set that they like to, that jumbo package that they love to go to and was successful and get yardage. So does that mean Nebraska has to go to the portal to find a back? I think it will absolutely look there now that Dante is out.
Yeah, I continue to have just a lot of questions about that room. That's one that I've pretty consistently had questions on for the last 2+ years now. So
yeah,
we'll see what they're.
Holgorsen made it look better in his 3 games.
That is true. I thought both Dowdell and Emmett, had some of their best stuff happen in those last 3 games of the season. So we'll see.
They just need the roles to be defined. I think way too often for Nebraska, and this is not just this year, but in recent years, since Nebraska's long run of great running backs ended, way too often it's just been wishy-washy about what you wanted the roles of the guys in that room to be. And that can't be the case. Like, define the roles and commit to it.
100%. Elsewhere, got the news yesterday that officially that Nebraska is going to open their 2025 real, not 2025 AA or anything like that, like the real 2025 season, Thursday, August 28th, 2025 in Kansas City, Missouri against Cincinnati. This game was originally scheduled for Cincinnati and then to Indianapolis at Lucas Oil Stadium, as was announced several months ago. And now to Kansas City, still serves as a home game technically for Cincinnati, but
won't look like that.
Definitely will not look like that. So let's talk about that. By the way, we're both Royals fans, as you may well know on this podcast. The Royals are on the road the 3 days before the game in Chicago. They'll return home for a weekend series against the Tigers Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Nebraska plays Cincinnati on Thursday across the parking lot. Bobby Witt Jr. bobblehead on Friday night at the K, by the way, just in case you were wondering.
Yeah, that's very exciting. That's very exciting. I'm glad that you have that information. I was looking around on the Royals schedule and saw that there's a home game with some kind of a promotion on the 29th. The fact that it's Bobby Witt bobblehead day changes my entire, not that I'm a big bobblehead collector, but it's Bobby Witt Jr. And I have a 14-year-old who.
And it's the Tigers. This could be for a playoff spot at this point.
Yeah. We're going to need to stick around, I think, for that one. It's week 1 of college football, but that doesn't happen until Saturday. So Nebraska's got the perfect little Thursday night game. Stick around in KC and catch a Royals game on Friday night. I feel like barbecue will be on the menu on Friday afternoon, early evening, and then a trip to the K. So I'm committing to that in this moment right now. I'm 100% committed to the Royals game on Friday night, August 29th.
Yeah, the Locked On Nebraska podcast will almost assuredly be coming to you from Kansas City, Missouri. That
Friday,
those couple of days. Yeah. I would pretty much lock that in at this point. The whole state's going to be there, Mitch. The stadium holds 76,000 people. I don't think it'll be full. But
how do the tickets work for that?
Well, so I'm not sure on this, but I would imagine that so Cincinnati they'll put some out to their season ticket holders, and I imagine they'll get some back, and then Nebraska, the general public, I think it goes on sale for them tomorrow, Wednesday. So we'll see what the initial returns are like here, but it's there's going to be 50,000 Nebraska fans in Kansas City.
Oh yeah. If not more, I'm sure part of the negotiations for this game had to do with the number of tickets that would be allotted to the general public or available for Nebraska fans. And clearly Cincinnati wants there to be a big crowd because they're going to make money off the game, which is the whole reason that you move the game out of Cincinnati. So
they're putting themselves in a hostile environment to make money, which is great. Love it.
Yeah, I mean, this is not going to be a situation like Tennessee is dealing with this right now in the CFP game that's Saturday night at Ohio State. In the 100,000 seat Horseshoe, the Vols fans were allotted 3,500 tickets. This is causing problems, but no, there will be tickets for Nebraska fans to buy, and they will fill it up with 50 to 60,000. It's going to look and sound a lot like a Chiefs game.
Yeah. So anything else on this? I mean, it's pretty cool. You mentioned this in here, that Nebraska's going to play back-to-back games at Yankee Stadium and Arrowhead Stadium. That's something. I don't know what that is, but it's something.
It's also going to play a game at Beaver Stadium, which seats 106,000 in 2025, and one at the Rose Bowl, which is a 92,000 seat stadium. That's a nice lineup of games, road games for Nebraska fans in the 2025 calendar year, to be able to go to Arrowhead, to go to Penn State. It's been a while, huge stadium, and the Rose Bowl. So the other road games next year are at Maryland and Minnesota. I was wondering as I thought about this yesterday, where would you like to see Nebraska play a game that it has not played in a long time?
Okay, I'm out on like the racetracks. I don't need to do any racetrack games.
Nope.
Like I feel like, the answer to this would be just to get back to a bowl game in like the Phoenix or Tampa area, but those are always, pretty good hubs for Nebraska fans. But as far as unique locations or settings around the country, Wrigley Field has always stood out to like I watch those Northwestern games, and I know they're a little wonky or whatever, but could you imagine Nebraska just playing Northwestern on a random Saturday at Wrigley Field and just filled up with red in Chicago? I think that'd be pretty cool. I'm in on that.
That'd be a sight. That'd be a sight for sure. I would like to see Nebraska play a game at SoFi. Nebraska's going to go to LA 2 out of every 4 years, but USC's not moving out of the Coliseum, moving a game out of the Coliseum. That's not what USC does. And UCLA certainly is not moving a game out of the Rose Bowl. Like, those are iconic venues in their own right. Not that SoFi is an iconic venue. It's just a very nice stadium. There's a bowl game at SoFi coming up here Bowl in a couple of days. Is the Jimmy Kimmel Bowl the same thing as the Art of LA Bowl?
Yeah, it must be the artist formerly known as the Jimmy Kimmel Bowl.
I'm sorry. The art. What is this? The Art of Sport LA Bowl between Cal and UNLV is this week, and it's tomorrow. This game, tomorrow night on ESPN. There's a game at SoFi Stadium, UNLV and Cal in the Art of Sport LA Bowl. So I don't want Nebraska to play in the Art of Sport LA Bowl, but I would like to see Nebraska play a game at SoFi Stadium. It looks very, very nice.
Yeah, hook it up. Nebraska is still hanging on to some non-con games. Tennessee is coming up, and Arizona and Oklahoma State. And Oklahoma, I think, is back on for a couple of years late in the decade. So
we'll see. We'll see what Troy Dannon has to say about all of that. All right. So to summarize, Nebraska goes Yankee Stadium, Arrowhead in back-to-back games. The Huskers probably need a portal running back. And final thought in this before we turn into some basketball in the next segment. Huskers are going hard after some portal wide receivers. Eric Rivers was in over the last couple of days. Nyzia Hunter is a guy. Eric Rivers is from FIU. Nyzia Hunter is a wide receiver who's scheduled to visit to Nebraska. He's from Cal. You have Dane Key, the Kentucky wide receiver, coached last year by Da'Keel Shorts, Nebraska's wide receivers coach. So we'll see where that goes. I think Nebraska's intent to add to its receiving core, along with many other positions. Offensive line, continue with defensive line. Huskers are looking for a punter, as we know, out of the portal. So expect a lot more portal news coming up in the days ahead as the Huskers continue practices for the Pinstripe Bowl. When we come back, we will talk about Fred Hoiberg and his group who are headed to Hawaii. That's next.
But first, before we talk some hoops at you, get ready to tackle NFL action this week with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need. You can place live bets on the NFL, but on a day like Tuesday, you're looking ahead to the weekend. How about Broncos Chargers on Thursday night? A good Sunday slate, of course, as well. Stuff to monitor throughout the week. You're even getting ready for your fantasy football championship weekends this weekend, so you can double down and bet on some props for your guys that need to take you home. Check that out on the FanDuel Sportsbook today, and you could even do it in the middle of the game. Head to FanDuel.com and join, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Once again, FanDuel.com, FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook.
Okay, we're back on this Tuesday. I'm Mitch Sherman from The Athletic. Connor Happer of 1620 The Zone is with me. Hey, we're going to have a mailbag show this week, Connor, on Thursday. So get your questions in for us. Send them to us on email at lockedonneb@gmail.com. That's probably the best way to get us questions for the mailbag. You can also hit us on Twitter with a DM, respond to something on the Locked On NEB Twitter page. I think we'll probably see those. You can also try to hit us in the YouTube comment section, but I think email or DM is the best way to go for mailbag. Looking to fill up the mailbag. Got a few questions already. We're going to make CFP picks before the end of the week. Also, so that will be.
We got a question already from Nick on Twitter, so I'm looking at it right now, so I won't forget that one. Make sure to include that one in the mailbag.
Yes, we'll do that. Okay, so in these last few minutes of the show here today, Nebraska basketball, huge win on Friday night of last week in the Huskers Big Ten opener, 85-68 against Indiana. It has been years since Nebraska has lost in the Big Ten at home. The Huskers have the longest home winning streak in Big Ten play. Brice Williams scored 30 in this one. He had 6 rebounds, 5 assists. And on Monday, Connor, he was named the Big Ten Player of the Week. Can you tell me the last time a Nebraska basketball player and who it might have been was named Big Ten Player of the Week?
I'm going to guess Keisei Tominaga got on a heater at some point. Did he not?
Didn't happen. That's what I would have thought too. Didn't happen. In March of 2022, Alonzo Verge was Big Ten Player of the Week. Remember Alonzo Verge? And he would have these like microwave moments where he would heat up and he would look like the best player in the Big Ten for like 10 minutes, 15 minutes, but it wasn't consistent.
That was the last bastion of the original Fred Hoiberg that came to Nebraska. Before everything changed the year after that. So
right, the Fred team that didn't fit Fred. Like he was trying to do something that wasn't him. He did it because it was just a cycle. It was like, let's rebuild this team. All right, who can we get? And you get these players, and they were not made for him to coach. And he has found that in the last couple of years with players like Brice Williams and Juwan Gary and the cast that you see out there for Nebraska on the court here again in this 24-25 season. I had real questions heading into this season and watching Nebraska's first couple of games about whether this team could be the kind of team that we saw Nebraska put on the court a year ago when it made the run to the NCAA tournament. And those questions have been answered. Like, Nebraska has that kind of mentality, play hard defense.
Yeah.
They can fight for rebounds. They have experience. They have guys who can score. They have guys who can shoot. Connor Essegian is like, this year's version of Keisei Tominaga. So can they make a run back to the NCAA tournament? Like, that very much is up in the air. But when they're playing well, they look pretty good.
Absolutely. Yeah. I definitely like the look of them right now. Doing what they did to Indiana on Friday night was really good. And, you might be able to just toss the Michigan State thing away. It feels like that wasn't going to be their day for Nebraska to open up conference play. And it was, it's still early in the season. So they'll go out to Hawaii and they'll play a couple games there. Nothing that's going to improve the resume much, and then jump back into conference play against UCLA after the new year on the 4th. But I just like they're going to do it as a team on the defensive side of the ball, right? So there's always a little bit of a ceiling as far as that is concerned. I just still wonder, and I don't know if we figured this out yet, like how good of a shooting team can they be? What is a consistent 3-point shooting night look like? That number has risen dramatically over the last couple of weeks. They're now at about 32% from the 3-point line as a team, which is in the mid 200s in the country. It's not great right now, but it's risen dramatically. And then 3-point defense is always going to be a big deal for them too. Can you run people off the 3-point line, because they're pretty good at post defense. So I think there's it has all of the makings still of really each of the last 2 Fred Hoiberg teams that have been able to piece it together and find enough scoring, find enough points, and find enough defense to be able to get them where they want to go. Is it a team that's going to make this crazy run and win several games in a row in March? Like, probably not, but I do think it has the look of an NCAA tournament team, just as last year's team did.
Yeah, I like the balance. I like the fact that they don't seem to rely on one player. Williams was the guy who took over against the Hoosiers, but we've seen that from Essegian. Williams is at 19 points a game, what he's averaging. So that's pretty darn good. Essegian's averaging 13 points a game. Juwan Gary, who seems to be Nebraska's kind of just like heart and soul as far as the guy who is going to will them to wins and just do like all the little things. Like, he's at 11 points a game. Andrew Morgan is just another very serviceable, very, very, like, he'll surprise you with his athleticism in the post at times. He's at 8 points a game. Raleigh Worcester, solid point guard, is at 8 points a game. Berke Buchtengel, he's the UCLA. He's from UCLA, correct? The UCLA transfer. Mm-hmm. At 8 points a game. So they just have this balance throughout. And then you have these pieces like Braxton Mia, who's a big guy who's going to dunk and block shots, and Sam Hoiberg coming off the bench, Aaron Ulitz coming off the bench. Gavin Griffiths hasn't really gotten rolling yet off the bench. They like Cale Jacobson as a piece who can come on and give them a spark. So there's a lot there.
Yeah,
I think with this Nebraska team to just kind of make things happen. They have options to go to. If like one thing's not working, there's somebody else they can go to. They don't have to rely on Essegian to be hitting threes every time out in the Big Ten.
I'm definitely intrigued. They need to take care of business in Hawaii this weekend and next week over Christmas, and then one more kind of pickup non-con game right before the new year, before they head into Big Ten play. But all things said and done, if you end up out of non-con at 10-1, 11-1 with the one loss to St. Mary's, and you beat Creighton on the road, like, that's
pretty good.
You would have absolutely signed up for that before the season, and then you could find a way to get to 500 in the league, and that's a 20-win team, and that's going to set you up well for Selection Sunday.
Yeah, I don't know what to make of the Big Ten. Looking at it, a lot of teams in that 8-9 win range. Michigan State was a good team, but are they a top 10 team? Probably not. UCLA is 9-1 and 2-0 in the league, and the Bruins will be the next conference game for Nebraska. Keep an eye as you watch basketball over the holidays. UCLA has games coming up against North Carolina and Gonzaga in the couple weeks to come, which would always be interesting to watch, but more notable if you're a Nebraska basketball fan, because that the Bruins will be at PBA on January 4th.
And they look like a Mick Cronin team now. Mick Cronin's really taking that thing. I mean, like, we're talking about other teams having 50-point outputs and stuff like that. Like, they're going to be Mick Cronin. It's defense. So right now UCLA is the 4th ranked efficiency defense in the country. So that's not surprising.
Okay. All right. We'll be back on Wednesday. Thanks for listening today. Thanks for making Locked On Nebraska your first listen. Your second listen should be the Locked On Big Ten podcast. Craig puts the Big Ten first. Ton to talk about this week with 3 Big Ten teams playing in the college football playoff this weekend, and then Oregon awaiting one of the first round winners. So find the Locked On Big Ten podcast on YouTube and wherever you listen to podcasts.